High Point was a type of track where you have to slow down to go fast. Incredibly technical. You have a lot of off cambers, slippery sections, some real deep sections. So you had to be on your toes. And the announcers alluded to how Jett is capable of just keeping it within himself and not riding 110%, unlike a rider potentially like Sexton. And we'll go over that. But here, this is after the first turn. Watch what Hunter does. Almost crashes, does basically a enduro style foot down wheelie over because this section got incredibly deep and there's just a gigantic hole sitting there in front of that factory HRC Honda, and he sticks that foot down and he's strong enough to just wheelie over it. Maybe he's not doing it as good as somebody like Billy Bolt, but hey, if it was a log, he could probably get over it. And unfortunately, Cooper behind him does the same thing. And as opposed to putting his foot down, he just tries to grab a handful of throttle and wheelie over the sucker, and it just stops him. So it tells you that that hole was just a vertical 90-degree pothole. But then behind him, you see Sexton take the same line, but he's just going to the left. And the consensus of the video is just riding over your head, going too fast. And that's something Sexton has to do. Just look at how fast he's pushing. Again, this was a moto where he started behind and he was able to bulldog his way through the entire field, or most of them, at least 5 or 6 of the riders. Here he comes over this nice little checkup bump after making this incredible triple to where most riders were then having to go to the outside. He's able to still make the inside, which is astonishing. And then come over here. Look, he gets on the gas. That front wheel stays in a wheelie in the rut. And he just has exponential speed towards this soft sand berm. And really, if the berm was a little bit longer here, it would have held him, because he got on the gas just too early. Most of the riders that are in a berm like this, or halfway berm, halfway rut, they started once it was officially the deep part of the rut. But no, he starts early, and that's when that front end starts pushing. And it just has too much speed, and he blows through the berm. And that's just from Sexton overriding not only the bike, but the track, because that's what it takes to beat Jett Lawrence. Jett has not kept any secrets that his shoulder is bothering him. And here, this is the back portion of the track where it's somewhat of some blind spots with the trees, and it's pretty deep back here, because it's like this halfway sand, halfway clayish dirt. But notice what he does. That inside shoulder drops just briefly. Do you see him? He's in a good position, but just and that tells you that's probably one of those moments of like, oh man, this hurts. This is difficult. I need to sit back down. Where he's just riding sore. I believe that's really what's going on with Jett, is he should be on the couch relaxing, but no, he's riding. So imagine the sorest you've ever been. Now go do a 35-minute moto. And that's what Jett is capable of doing and excelling at by still winning the last couple of races. Moving on to my boy Tom Vialle. Yes, we all know that I'm somewhat of a super fan of Tom. I like his demeanor. I like the way he rides the bike, and him coming over from Europe. He made some mistakes, and it all started because of the rider behind him, which is Deegan. And whenever you are pushing a track like this, you're going to potentially crash and make some mistakes. What does he do? He's trying to keep his third place, and so he comes in this corner too fast, where it starts there, gets his weight off because he gets kicked from that rut. You can see he's already trying to figure out how to still make one of these ruts, and these are these hard-packed ruts that have a hard time pushing through. In my last video, I showed you that guys like Jett were wheeling over, and so now he's in a situation of trying not to crash. He comes into the next rut too hot, and it takes his shifter foot off the foot peg, and he's just trying to keep his balance. He gets back on, coming through. The bike bounced over one of the ruts, so then he sticks his other foot down, and luckily he sticks that foot down because He doesn't do what Sexton does, where once that front end pushes, you just low side. But as soon as he puts that foot down, it bounces him up, and he does somewhat of a Superman. But we'll watch that in real time. And this was all just caused because he was trying to keep Deegan from passing him, who just had a pace that nobody could match. Here's another example. Hymas out front, trying to keep Ty down, is riding over the track's ability because he doesn't want to get past. He's trying to come back to the inside to cover the line. And so he's entering these ruts faster than he has before. And right here, you could see that his balance is getting kicked off. And that's when his outside foot comes off the foot peg. Then the balance, then the butt slides over. And then the front end catches. And luckily, he was able to keep it on 2 wheels. It was just from pushing the envelope. When you have these gnarly, gnarly deep ruts, and there's lots of little obstacles in the middle of them, sometimes giant potholes, sometimes just chatter bumps, when you come in faster than what you're prepared to do or capable of doing, just the track itself, well, it's going to make your butthole pucker about this big. Lack of any other terminology. We're all racers here. We know what I'm talking about here. And Hymas is on point. I do think Hymas can beat Deegan. I really do. I think he's one of the riders that has the speed to dethrone the current fastest rider on a 250. And here, this is not necessarily a mistake, but this step up to left-hander to the finish line, everyone was taking the same rut. And the rut ended up getting pushed out because it was slippery. The rut was originally started here. Well, from just multiple riders, it got pushed out, but then people would hook. And watch what Sexton does. That bike just hooks back. And for a lot of riders out there, like pro riders, they know that you are one with the bike. The majority of the time you're squeezing hard with your knees, but in the air, it's the time to relax and let the bike float underneath you. And so in a situation like this, where he is still in the rut, but he knows it's going to kick him, he's prepared for this bike to float underneath him and to kick sideways. It's not a mistake, but he just unweights the motorcycle. He's not gripping hard. He's not squeezing the bike hard with his knees, and he just lets that bike float underneath him and do this half-assed whip that could put a lot of other riders in a precarious situation. But no, these pro riders have done this tens of thousands of times. They know how to handle these bikes in the air. It's almost like when the wind blows you in the air, you kind of just let it happen, but you also jump into the wind so that it blows you where you're supposed to go. But for a lot of riders that haven't been in this kind of a situation, well, here's something to learn from, is you don't panic and you don't stiffen up, because if you stiffen up, then that bike lands sideways, and then you are in a situation where if you're not on the gas, it could catch, and then you get a high side type of a moment. But look at this. This bike goes sideways on him, and just by releasing the tension on the motorcycle, it comes back straight, and he lands relatively straight. So I hope you guys learned something, and if you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Until next time, this is Johnny Hopper. Keep it WFO. Ra-da-da-da-da.